Every day, we pull air into our lungs thousands of times, entirely without thinking about it. But for most of human history, the actual biological reason we did this was a complete mystery. Well into the 18th century, the prevailing medical theory was strictly mechanical. Physicians believed breathing was simply a way to ventilate the body. By tracking these closed systems, Lavoisier proved air was a complex mixture containing a respirable component, oxygen, that animals actively consumed to survive. Breathing did not cool the body down. It fueled a slow, highly controlled combustion process, burning the food we eat to extract energy. To get that oxygen from the atmosphere into our cells, the body uses a highly specialized delivery system. It starts when air enters the nasal cavity, where it is instantly warmed, moistened, and filtered by microscopic hairs. From there, the air is pulled downward. It passes through the pharynx, glides past the vocal cords in the larynx, and travels down the windpipe, or trachea. Deep in the chest, this single pipeline splits into two main bronchi, one for each lung. Those tubes then branch out into thousands of progressively smaller pathways called bronchioles. This diagram illustrates the alveoli, tiny air sacs clustered by the millions, with walls just one cell thick. Because the membrane is so thin, oxygen diffuses directly into the blood network, while carbon dioxide diffuses out to be exhaled. The entire architecture of the respiratory tract, from the nose down to the microscopic alveoli, functions as a massive funnel, built entirely to safely transfer oxygen into our circulatory system. Once that oxygen is in the bloodstream, it's carried to individual cells across the body. It passes through the cell membrane and enters the mitochondria. Inside this structure, a complex chain reaction takes place called aerobic respiration. The cell uses the delivered oxygen to methodically break apart the chemical bonds of glucose derived from our food. This equation shows exactly what happens. Oxygen and glucose react to produce water, carbon dioxide, and a molecule called ATP. ATP acts as the cell's universal energy currency. When the body performs work, it breaks these phosphate bonds, releasing an exact, usable packet of energy. This continuous chemical breakdown inside the mitochondria is the biological engine that drives muscle contractions, nerve impulses, and keeps multicellular life functioning. But when you sprint 100 yards, your muscles require a massive amount of ATP, far more than your lungs and heart can supply with oxygen. To prevent the muscles from failing outright, the cells trigger a biochemical failsafe called anaerobic respiration, attempting to break down glucose without any oxygen at all. This emergency pathway is incredibly inefficient, producing only a small fraction of the ATP that the aerobic process normally would. This chart shows the consequence of that incomplete reaction. As the athlete exercises, a byproduct called lactic acid rapidly builds up. This accumulation alters the cellular environment, leading directly to the burning sensation and acute muscle fatigue you feel. The backup system keeps you moving in an emergency, but it creates a chemical oxygen debt. Once the sprint is over, you have to stand there and pant, breathing heavily to finally deliver the oxygen needed to clear the acid out of your system. While the cellular demand for oxygen and glucose is a constant rule of biology, nature has built entirely different delivery pipelines depending on where an organism lives. Insects like grasshoppers don't use blood to carry oxygen. Instead, they rely on a tracheal system, a network of hollow tubes that pipe air straight from the outside directly into their tissues. Underwater, the engineering problem is harder because oxygen is dissolved within the water. Fish solve this through branchial respiration. By pulling water into their mouths and forcing it over these bin-gill lamellae, capillary networks absorb the oxygen directly into the bloodstream. Whether an animal relies on branching lungs, rigid tracheae, or exposed gills, evolution has drafted vastly different physical blueprints to accomplish the exact same chemical reaction. This cycle of oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide generation extends far beyond individual bodies, forming one half of a global biological loop. The other half takes place inside the chloroplasts of plants through an anabolic process called photosynthesis, which runs the chemical equation of respiration entirely in reverse. This diagram illustrates the exchange. Plants capture solar energy to bind carbon dioxide and water together, synthesizing fresh glucose and releasing oxygen. The carbon dioxide animals exhale serves as the primary fuel for plant life, providing the raw carbon required to build their tissues. Every breath you take is tied to this cycle. The combustion happening inside your cells is perfectly balanced against the synthesis happening in the forests, locking every living thing into a single, continuous planetary engine.